Solar Panel, the Phoenix Sun Show.
Hey there, and welcome to another live edition of the Sun's Solar Panel. How is everybody doing this morning? I've got a full panel. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on to the show on our live YouTube channel. And I want to welcome my big panel today. This is the solar panel, and we are making it a full panel because we got a lot to talk about. First of all, I want to introduce my regular co-host, Zona Hoops. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. You said it would take a village, and you got a whole village on the podcast, so off to a good start.
That's right. All right. I'm also joined here by a regular on the show and a regular in the chat as well as on the show, Jake Bronger, Coach Fallen Founder. How you doing today?
Doing well. I don't know. Have you guys heard? Is there any news about Robert Sarver?
Has he been in the
breaking
news
lately?
Yeah, he's breaking something. Yep. And our special guest, not that all of us aren't special, but this is a real special guest. Good friend of mine. He's been sitting with me on Media Row watching this shit show of the Phoenix Suns for 10 years now. And whenever we think good things are happening, something always pulls us back. And I wonder, we're going to talk about today what that something is. PLR, Paul Richardson, how you doing today, man?
I am excellent. Thanks for having me on this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been sitting next to each other on Media Row for years, and this is one of those news items that we really need to talk about together on this show. So thank you for coming on. You are on the solar panel, everybody. Thank you all for joining. It's always free, it's always fresh, and it's always presented by the Basketball Podcast Network. We've got a live interactive show like this every Saturday, and we have midweek episodes with guests. So you've got to get subscribed to our audio pod because the midweek episodes are audio only, and at least for the first 2 days or so, and then I'll put them up on YouTube sometimes. But they're audio only. Subscribe to that podcast feed, and if you're here on YouTube today, hit that thumbs up. Smash that thumbs up. It helps the algorithms, gets us seen by more people. If you're listening on the podcast, give us a rating and a review if you're on Apple Pod. That would be really wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's dive into the show. Guess what? We have something to talk about, everybody. We have a Robert Sarver issue, don't we?
Just a little bit. It's been floating around here and there.
Jesus. All right, so to get everybody caught up, just in case you're on this show, but you haven't been paying attention to anything else in between the games other than watching the guys play, which they did this week. If you haven't been paying any attention, Robert Sarver has been accused of racism, of misogyny. Misogyny, for those who don't quite get it, is treating people poorly, and especially women, and sexual, harassment and things like that. There are a lot of accusations against Robert Sarver. This was written by Baxter Holmes of ESPN, and he spent a year doing background on this, interviewing current and former Suns employees about their experience with Robert Sarver. Robert Sarver, as we all know, is not a great owner to have. People have been wanting Robert Sarver to get out for a long time, but what none of us really knew, well, some of us knew, but none of us really knew that are outside the organization, that he basically is a guy who's an old white man owner, which means he feels like he can say anything he wants, he can do anything he wants, and he can get away with it with impunity because he has an ironclad agreement with his other owners to run the team. They can't get rid of him unless he does something incredibly egregious. And he wants to run the Suns, and no one's going to tell him not to run the Suns. So that guy he can do anything he wants. He feels like he can do anything he wants. According to these reports, he once pantsed an employee in the middle of a big all-staff meeting. I don't know if any of you guys have you guys ever been pantsed? Raise your hand if you've been pantsed by somebody with 100 people around. Oh, you've been pantsed?
Not quite 100.
Not quite 100, but it left a lot of room to interpret that.
You did.
Have you ever been pantsed in front of 100
Yeah,
people.
we've all been. Yeah.
You didn't let me. I guess I didn't finish fast enough. So, well, tell us, PLR. Tell me about the pantsed episode you've had.
Oh,
I gotta know.
basketball locker room, and I wasn't the only one. It was take turns pantsing. It was probably one of the stupidest, most immature, like 14, 15-year-old thing. It was oh, you got pants, ha ha ha. You got
Okay,
pants.
so you were in your teens.
Yes.
You were not 53 at the
Well,
time.
I'm not 53 yet, so that'd be kind of hard to.
Right. So you didn't pants somebody when you were in your 50s.
No.
And you didn't get pantsed when you were in your 20s. Okay. So this is a bunch of boys running around a locker room pantsing each other. That sounds
exactly immaturity.
Coach, tell us about your pantsing episode.
So I was in a fraternity in college, and so yeah, I mean, just kind of like not kind of the horror stories that you read about, but I mean, like there was guys just kind of messed around and yeah, like competitive sports and stuff like that, and if somebody's getting ready to take a big 3-pointer and you go and you pull his shorts down and you notice that he manscaped, then you know you've got a fraternity brother for life because he's taking real good care of it himself. See how I slipped that right in.
You just all right, Zona, no pantsings.
No, I actually have. I was just waiting for you to finish the full thing before raising my hand. Not in front of 100 people, but yeah, I was actually in basketball locker room, so I can relate to Paul on that one. It was just kind of like a stupid, like
just screwing around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so pantsing in and of itself.
Not in front of all my coworkers, by my boss. So
Yeah.
Well,
like
and
that.
it's by peers, right? It's by
Yeah.
your friends. It's by your teammates. Pantsing is not like that's something that's never happened. We've all been pantsed at some point in our life, but not generally by the CEO of our company at a company event when we're professionals and not in a locker room. I don't care if it's the Phoenix Suns as the organization. These are not. So says Jay, says he's pantsing Dave next time I say it. No, man, my belt's too tight. Blaze Megatron, when you're 6'3", 230, strangely, few people have ever tried to pants me. Well, you haven't been in a basketball locker room much, I guess. I don't know. Maybe you have, but they're all about that big. So anyway, yeah, this happens, but it doesn't happen in a professional setting. I've been a professional world manager for 30 years. If I ever pantsed somebody at a company event, we used to, before the pandemic, have company events. If I ever did that, I would fire myself. I mean, I should get fired. There's no way I should show up the next day at work. And this is the smallest of all the things, but it's the one thing that Robert Sarver admitted to after all those accusations. He denied treating women like property. He denied treating employees in general like property. He denied creating a toxic workplace. He denied saying the N-word, even if it was copying somebody else's use of it. It's still not appropriate. He denied everything rather than say, man, I really feel bad if people took how I treat them poorly and I'm going to make changes and I apologize. He never said any of that. All he apologized for was pantsing another dude. That's the only thing he apologized for. Thoughts?
Well, okay. I've said you and I have talked about this, and honestly, I hate to say it like this. I think we're going to have a 5 to 8 month investigation. It's going to come back. Yeah, he did this or that. Look, if 70 people are saying something, it all isn't a lie, right? But it all isn't. And I'm going to say this too, and I'm not taking Sarver's side, but it probably all isn't true either. You know what I mean? There's always a balance somewhere in there. But after this long, and I always say, what's the end game? What's going to happen down the line? 5, 8 months later, we're going to come out. Yeah, he pants someone. Yeah, he probably copied saying the N-word to somebody. And he's really sorry for what he did. We're going to send him to sensitivity training. We're going to find the Suns, $3 million, $4 million, and we're going to move on. Unfortunately, unlike the situation in LA, there is no fire tape. There's no video hard copy. This is he said, she said, he said. And at worst, it's going to be you've been a crass owner. You say crass things, and you need to stop that crap immediately. Otherwise, we're going to take away the protection umbrella. And just before we came on, when Larry Fitzgerald backs you up in the state of Arizona, in the city of Phoenix, honestly, you're going nowhere, because that guy's been the face of sports in this city for what now, 10, 15 years, if not more. So if he's co-signing you, you really better come back with some fire gun to get ousted.
So let's talk through this really quick. And you've hit on some great points, PLR. Let's talk through. So what has happened since the article came out with as many as 70 employees, none of them named. All right. They all went anonymous with one or two exceptions. I think there was one exception there, but none of them have been named, especially the most egregious situations. All the owners except one, all the co-owners. Now, Robert Sarver is part of a partnership group. There's, I don't know, at least a dozen different owners with partial stake in the team. Sarver has the largest stake, and he has an agreement with those other owners that he runs the team. All the other owners except one came out in support of Robert Sarver, saying, yeah, he's a tough guy, but he's not a racist, and he's not a misogynist. That's his peers among the ownership group. What's also interesting is that folks like Monty Williams, Devin Booker, Chris Paul hasn't said anything in particular, but he did say we want to wait for this to play out. That's all the current James Jones. There are a lot of Steve Nash, Steve Kerr, and now you say Larry Fitzgerald. All these luminary names in the NBA with the Suns, related to the Suns, have come out and said that they have never witnessed any of these things themselves, and they support Robert Sarver as the owner. This is really interesting because they're either turning a blind eye or he picks and chooses his moments. He does not look to be the guy who properly picks and chooses his moments. One of the dudes who is happy to name himself in the accusations against Robert Sarver is former coach Earl Watson. PLR and I, we covered the team when Earl Watson was around. He did not really get along with the team. Obviously, as we all know, he ended up getting fired by the Suns for, well, it should have been for cause, but it was actually because he wouldn't fire his own sports agent, the Clutch Sports Agency, when Robert Sarver told him to. So he comes out and says Robert Sarver used the N-word and things like that. But that's it among the former employees. That's it among the former luminaries and Arizona luminaries who are coming against Sarver. PLR, does that mean that all these 70 witnesses, all these 70 people are lying?
No, it doesn't, but it doesn't mean that they're all telling the truth either. You know what I mean? Look, stories can change and embellish over 15 years. Stories can change and embellish over 3 years. Honestly, I can tell you right now, I played the greatest game of Madden ever in the early 2000s that no one would ever rival. But that I've embellished the amount of touchdowns over the last 10 years. So everyone's story changes a little. I'm not saying, listen, I think there's a different level of, and I think we all need to get to this, of understanding there's a difference of racism and comfort and being allowed to say things you shouldn't say. And I think a lot of that comes from surrounding yourself by certain people. Dave, you and I have hung out. We've not just sat next to each other in press row, but we've gone out together. Let me clean that up. It's not like we're partying, but we've had dinner together. We've gone out together. We've done things together. Our comfort level will allow us to say things to each other that wouldn't be said around someone else. Now, if anyone has a hot mic, at any time, one of us could probably get in trouble for what we would say. I think Sarver has an issue with not knowing his audience and when to say certain things. There are things that I can say to you that I can't say to someone else because they don't know me like that. And back in my corporate life, I used to tell people all the time, you have to understand you are always on stage. The mic is always hot. So no matter what you say, it's always hot. And if you say it to the wrong person, you're in trouble. I think Sarver has a problem maybe saying things to the wrong people the wrong way. And so no, I don't think 70 people are lying. No, I don't think he's this flat out, Clipper racist. I think he has an issue with, I'm cool with this guy, I can get away with saying it, or I'm your boss, I can say this jokingly. I think that's the issue more than being a slumlord to minorities in Los Angeles, because the two keeps getting compared.
Well, let's go to the Sterling comparison in a minute, but I want to follow up on that. PLR, you made some good points in that stories can get embellished over the years. But here's the issue. Here's my issue, and I'm gonna turn it over to Zona and Coach here in just a second. But I've got to respond with, here's the issue. If you, as the owner, offend your employees so much that 70 of them will come out and say, that really made me uncomfortable. I really didn't like working there. I needed to get out. I needed to leave. I didn't like this guy. You're doing something wrong. I don't care about your impulse control issues. I don't care about how rich you are. I don't care about how many people you quote unquote own, which is not the kind of own that people want to say, want to think it is, the worst kind, but it's certainly the I can do what I want and you have to take it kind of own because I'm your employer. That is not okay. And if 70 people are saying it's, you know what, you and I have talked to current employees and past employees of the Suns. What do they all say in unison? Every single one of these employees have said, A, sounds like Robert. I know exactly those stories. I was there for some of those things. And B, I never really personally heard the racism stuff. So the racism things were probably used out of context as far as he's probably not, I don't know. There's different levels of it. If you use those kind of terms, then you are on some level, but not necessarily in a big redneck kind of way. A lot of people have not heard that themselves, but they totally believe that he would have done it. And even people who weren't in those stories, there for those stories, are like, oh yeah, that's Robert. I'm sure that happened. 100% sure that happened. So that is not okay. That is not okay. Zona, what do you think? Sorry, we've been doing all the talking so far. Tell us your stories.
It's been a great back and forth, but yeah, I think this is a lot closer to the Cuban situation than it is the Sterling. There's no like damning, audio or video evidence that I think could actually put him out. So obviously the stories kind of add up. When it's 70 interviews and, all the past employees of, people that I know that worked for the Suns too have kind of said, yep, this is right in line with what I think this work environment's been. But yeah, there has to be more for him to actually leave at this point, where the players and staff have to step in and get something done, which hasn't happened. So I think based off of he said, she said, I just don't think it's going to be enough to move the needle. But yeah, it's unfortunate timing, and just I think with how long this has been going on, it's given Sarver a chance to kind of defend himself. Shout out to Jordan Schultz for leaking the story early. That was very dumb. I'd be pissed if I was Baxter. Like Bob said, I'd punch him in the face. Bob Young said that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. But yeah, I think right now, as things stand, I just don't think it's enough. Hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I think there's a good chance that more comes out in the following weeks, and the NBA investigation, we'll see what takes place. But yeah, it's tough to see this really moving the needle.
Yeah,
Coach.
Yeah. I think, you guys have hit it. If there's smoke, there's fire to a degree. and so I expect the investigation to be ongoing. I expect more people to come forward and say, there was inappropriate comments made, or, I felt uncomfortable in the workspace. But it's interesting. I don't want to make light of it, but it's something that a lot of us all know is the court of public opinion and any type of PR battle. Sarver is not a very popular owner of the Phoenix Suns. If you looked at the Twitter sphere, as soon as this article came out, it was finally we're going to get rid of Robert Sarver and we're going to get a good owner. Now, if this stuff came out about Larry Fitzgerald, I'm going to guess that most of the people on Twitter would have said, "Oh, that doesn't sound like Larry. Larry's great." And or if Larry said that, he was just joking around, because you can buy yourself a little bit of kind of breathing room on that stuff. When I first read the article, I was like, wow, that's pretty terrible. But then there was a very popular show for a long time called The Office. And Michael Scott made things that if it was in real life, you would have said, oh my God, this guy should have been fired a million times. Yet people kept watching the show saying, Michael Scott's the best, isn't he? I mean, he says such inappropriate
Nobody
things
says Robert Sarver's the best, though, Coach.
No, exactly. That's the thing. But if you substitute everything that Robert's accused of with Michael Scott having done it, you're like, yeah, I get it. And that's why I think you see people like a Larry Fitzgerald just being like, I don't know what's going on here. Like I see Devin Booker just said, in all my years here, I haven't noticed it, but it is something to take serious. And I think that's where it's going to come down to is can they find something big there? Is there a tape? Is there some stronger report? Because, I don't know when I was growing up, of course, my mother never wanted me to say any bad words ever. But if I ever did them when I was quoting somebody, if I said, oh, this kid said the F word, but I said the actual word, and I said, but don't worry, Mom, I'm just quoting what he said, I could avoid getting that disciplinary look and stern like punishment of like, how dare you use bad language. So I don't know if Robert just thought that he was cool and that he can just say what other people say, and he just is an idiot like Michael Scott.
Right.
But that's I don't know if there's a different lifestyle that the people with, I hate to say, a lot of money like Robert think that they usually can just kind of get away with, and that could be pantsing an employee in front of 100 of their peers, whereas any work environment that I'm guessing the rest of us have all been into, as we discussed before, if your friends do it and you're out playing a pickup game and you're 18 years old, okay. But if you're in a professional office work environment and somebody says, oh, I'm calling a meeting, and then somebody pantses you along the way in front of everyone, that's usually when HR has to get involved.
Yeah, man, if you're going to go to office managers from The Office, it's like the idiocy of Michael Scott combined with the inhumanity of Robert California. So let's
Todd Packer, if you remember,
Todd Packer
showed me like, Michael,
yes!
You're the best. Oh, say this about all the women.
If Todd Packer was a multi-millionaire given money to open a bank by his dad, that would be Robert Sarver.
We're all just Toby, right? We're all just Toby Flenderson sitting in the back going, come on, man. Are you serious? You can't do that.
Todd Packer. Okay, we've decided.
Hey, Dave, can I ask a question real quick? Uh-huh. Let me ask you this. I'm going to actually reverse this a little bit. You said if it was Larry Fitzgerald and this came out, we would be like, oh, man, he didn't mean it, or we'd come to his defense. Is it easier to accept everything because of Sarver's reputation? Is it easier to accept he's done all these things? So
that's the way the human brain works. That's not because we want it to happen.
Right.
That's because exactly PLR. Yeah.
So that's a good point.
So my question is, when I saw the tweets too, like, take the team, we have to start to separate. And this is where I say we have to, Twitter isn't always a bunch of adults. Sometimes there's a guy with like 2 followers.
Even adults are not adults on Twitter.
Exactly. So we have to kind of break this down, I think, and say, okay, here's a guy that owns a team worth $2 billion. Is the NBA going to sever relationships over him because he said something we could send him the sensitivity training for? Yeah. Are we going to sever ties because he's a lousy boss, which people that work for him in his bank business said he's a lousy boss and he's demanding and he says stupid things? Are we going to sever ties with him because he doesn't know the difference between a 14-year-old prank and a 50-year-old prank? are those things we're really going to sever the ties for? Or do we need something humongous? And I honestly don't believe humongous is there. And
No.
that may, that could swing either way. I just don't think humongous is there for him. I think it's easy to believe that he said these things, did the things, the 70 people lied. But then if I'm his attorney, I'm going to say, he's employed over 20,000 people. 70 don't like him. You do that number with anybody in the world, there are going to be 70 people that don't like you. So 70 out of 20,000, we'll take that. Big deal.
So let's go through what's happened here with these NBA investigations. The NBA is launching an investigation. They are going to have people come in and interview current and probably the former employees. They're probably going to ask the ESPN person to reveal sources. The ESPN person will say, no, you do your own investigation because that's what he's supposed to do as a journalist. But the NBA will come in. They'll talk to people. If the people feel like, now here, let me shift the conversation for a second to the people. Okay. There are people involved. There are employees involved here. What's come out from the NBA is none of the Suns employees have ever complained to the NBA overall. And what you're supposed to do as an aggrieved employee is go to your human resources. And then if you can't, go to some superior human resources if you can. And then that's the NBA league office. League is saying they've never, through their channels, both anonymous and non-anonymous, have ever heard a complaint come from a Suns employee about how they're treated by Robert Sarver. What does that mean? Again, I've worked in the corporate world for a long time. That could mean one of two things. A, the person is completely making it up for the sake of the journalist who called them at home. And it never happened. Or B, they don't believe that the NBA or the Phoenix Suns HR department is going to do anything good for them by them coming forward. I've dealt with this in the corporate world. If people don't trust HR because they think HR is in the pocket of the owner or the senior management, they don't go to HR because they know what's going to get out. They know the team, the people that you're complaining about are going to retaliate against you because usually you're coming from a bottom-up situation. You're complaining up. If you're complaining up, you don't go to HR because you know they're going to retaliate. It just happens. No matter how hard you work on your corporate culture, there are always people who feel like they can't talk to HR because they're going to get retaliated against for it. If you got 70 current and former employees, this is a problem. And so notice I gave you two reasons why somebody won't have gone to the league office. A, it never happened and they're making it up now. Or B, they didn't trust the league office would help them. I did not give the reason of it actually happened and I'm losing my train of thought for a second. I did not give the reason that the person I've completely lost my train of thought. Allegations. Women, especially women, don't feel like anyone's going to help them, especially if the HR people are males or just not really in charge of being able to handle things. That's probably why nothing has gone to formal HR investigations or the league investigations because people didn't think they would be supported. It's not because these things didn't actually happen. I don't think it's these things didn't actually happen. So that's it.
And I wouldn't go to HR either if one of the reports was that a woman was sexually harassed and their solution was to move her desk. So, not the greatest solution there. But, I think HR is always very complex in terms of, are they in the owner's pocket? Is everything going to go upstairs? Can I actually share what's happening right now? And a lot of people avoid that just out of embarrassment too from coworkers and stuff like that. So that's probably why you're seeing more people speak up, and maybe that story leads to people that have been holding stuff out for years, like come forward in the next few months in these investigations. So I think there's a lot more that's going to come. Will it be enough to actually get him to sell a team or get him to move, get the NBA to step in? that remains to be seen. It just depends on how much more and what the criteria is.
Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think HR is always, it's the double edge because they're supposed to be there to kind of weed out the cultural issues in the office workplace. However, their employer is still the company. It's still the Phoenix Suns organization. So they need to protect the product. And so if you're the one person complaining and nobody else complains about somebody, and that person is a valuable asset to the organization, it's a difficult thing for them to do anything other than anytime I've been around HR, they always say, well, have you tried to start a dialogue, or we could facilitate a dialogue? And it's like, no, I don't want to facilitate a dialogue. I want you to tell this person to knock it off or make this stop. And no, it's the awkwardness, because then they won't come out and say, like, sometimes we'd rather just cut our losses with an employee. But at the end of the day, they have to be as neutral as possible, but they also have to still get a paycheck at the end of the day too from the organization. And but one other thing before it slips my mind too, if only because I made the office reference before, one of the other accusations that Robert had was that he had a picture of his wife in a bikini and he sent it around the workplace. And there's a famous Michael Scott when he takes Jan's picture and sends it around the workplace. And that was the thing that really made me think he thinks he's Michael Scott, because he's just like, hey, here's a picture of my wife. Does everybody want to see it? No, we're good, man. You don't have to show it to us. And no, I'll just forward it to General All at Suns.
Hey, man, you're ruining the office for me. Now I'm going to think of Sarver every time I think of Michael Scott.
No, it's tough because Michael Scott actually has a human side. That was one of the better parts of his character. But yeah, I'm glad Todd Packer got written out of the show after a while. I wish Sarver would get written out. Okay, so yeah, people are going on about the HR part. PLR, tell me about your experiences with HR and what you think might be happening about the fact that people haven't complained all the way up to the league level.
I think HR is actually one of the. I said this for years working in corporate. They are tied to basically what Coach just said. The owners and the HR basically works for the owner. At the end of the day, the commissioner works for the owners. At the end of the day, so they can't do anything that the other owners is not going to allow. So if you go to HR. If I go to HR right now, say I work for, I don't know, pick any company, and I say the guy that runs everything was in my office saying some really crazy stuff, he's not getting fired. They're going to make the HR call and say, yo, dude, knock it off. Whereas if my direct manager is doing it and I have it on tape, they're going to say you're fired. There's a difference. So people go to HR based on their comfort level for what they think they can get accomplished. Some people go to HR because they know if they complain about the higher up, not only will their job be saved, but maybe they get a settlement to go elsewhere. There's different levels of doing stuff. I know in the past, I know someone that complained. Personally, I know someone that complained. They actually wrote them a check to leave. And this was at a Fortune 500 company because it was on a higher up that they were just simply not going to let go. So they gave them a check to walk away and sign a disclosure to say, we won't talk about this again. So there's
that's
a
what
lot
Baxter
of reasons.
Holmes wrote, that several employees have told him is that, or that they either heard of or were somebody who signed an NDA and they can't go on record because of that.
So nothing surprises me. You know what? I'm not quite as old as Dave, but nothing surprises me that I hear anymore.
Probably about a week, maybe. I don't know. Let's not go that far. Yes, we have two generations on this panel right now. Okay.
But yeah, nothing surprises me. And so HR is good. And I'll throw my old company under the bus. I don't care. Wells Fargo was known if an employee went to HR, that employee, they would bend over backwards to try to make that employee happy because they didn't want bad pub. If anyone in mid-management or lower management went to HR, it was like, grow up, run your division. So it depends on who you were going to human resources.
So this just reinforces my belief that these things happened. He made an uncomfortable workplace. He made people feel like they shouldn't be there, or didn't want to be there anymore, when working for the Suns was their dream, and that's why they got those jobs. And so it is frustrating. It's not unusual. There are a lot of companies like that, but Robert Sarver is a unique individual that makes it a little bit worse than it should have been. That right there, to me, is a reason to replace the guy in charge. You can't in the rest of the world, you don't leave somebody in charge for being that bad of a boss that you create a toxic workplace that nobody can report to. But let's go through what the league thinks. Now, the league is a collection of guys just like Robert Sarver, 30 of them, who run their teams any way they want to run them, and they have full impunity. And the only cop they have basically is Adam Silver. But Adam Silver reports to the board of governors, which is the owners. And so the only reason Adam Silver is ever going to step in is if it's so egregious that all the other 30 owners can look at each other and say, that's worse than anything I would ever do. You know why they have to be able to say that to each other? Because if you get out an owner who is just kind of doing a lot of the same things you do, or you just don't, you don't want the league to be able to subjectively interpret how you treat your employees and how you go about your business, you're opening yourself up to getting ousted in the future. If you become one of the lynch mob, you can be lynched in the future. Or one of carrying pitchforks, you can be somebody who's the pitchforks are against you next time. That's just crazy that these owners think that way. But Mark Cuban said back when Donald Sterling, who was on record using all the worst language possible, was a lifelong, career-long racist, and Mark Cuban even didn't want to vote him out. And then we find out later Mark Cuban's not the greatest owner in the world either, and he got investigated, and all he got was a slap on the wrist. So I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I think to echo something that PLR talked about at the beginning, and this is something that, in my line of work, we talk about all the time, is there can be a hot mic anywhere. You are always especially in modern day. I mean, if you listen to stand-up comedians now, they talk about the age of the smartphones, because you could be up on stage and everyone is recording you, and then you can leave the stage and everyone could still be recording you. And so I could understand it from a owner's type deal where, they would sit there and not excusing Sterling at all, but just like, oh shoot, I've said some things in the past. I've done some things in the past that aren't the best. I'm not proud of it. So I don't want other people coming at me saying, you know what, we found this out 20 years ago that you did this, so we're coming for you now. And so I think they're just a lot happier to just say, hey, you know what, can we fine him? Can we discipline him? And can we move on and focus on the general NBA product? I think that's kind of their approach to it. It's just like, I'd hate it if everyone turned on me.
Yeah.
That's why presidents always pardon past presidents, because every president has done dirt. And you will never see a president, no matter how crappy the one before him was, go after him, because they know in their 4 years, they're going to do some crappy stuff that could get them out. So they always pardon each other. Owners will always pardon each other. Yeah. It's just the way it goes.
Yep. Rich people stick together.
They do. And unfortunately, that's what we've got. So the likelihood here is that unless there's a grassroots uprising from some level, Robert Sarver stays where he is. Now let's talk about that report that Jalen Rose was on ESPN the other day, just yesterday, I think. And he just dropped a bomb in the middle of a little rant about Robert Sarver. Jalen Rose played for the Suns for a year, never got on the court, has spent the last, to be fair, he spent the last 10 years complaining about everybody with the Suns, including Mike D'Antoni not playing him, the team not playing any defense, all these things, all these negative things you can possibly do. Jalen Rose has not been a fan of the Suns organization. He drops that Robert Sarver did not want to pay DeAndre Ayton because in Robert Sarver's words, apparently through Jalen Rose, he was a lazy N-word. This is Robert Sarver who says that N-word is not part of his lexicon, and if he ever used it, it was only because he was quoting somebody else.
Yeah, and that wasn't in the story. So that's either a bombshell or something he was just kind of making up as he went. I don't think Jalen would just throw that out there unless it was legit, hopefully, because that's a pretty big acquisition to just kind of throw out there. So maybe this goes back to the point that there's more that we don't know about. And just the way he casually dropped it on air is pretty crazy, because that would have been one of the, I think if that was in the story, that probably would have been the closest thing to the smoking gun.
Could have been the headline. Yeah.
One of my concerns with this is, and this actually reminds me of a tweet from our friend So Says Jay, that everyone should go to law school and figure out the law so that we can all play weekend lawyers on these types of issues and what's allowed in the workplace or not. I think that's what he tweeted. But Jalen Rose, Earl Watson, and some of the other people that have come out that used to work for the Suns organization, the first knock against them is unfortunately going to be they have a motive to be upset with the Suns organization. Jalen did not like his time in Phoenix. Earl Watson was fired. And so until it becomes somebody that left on their own accord, like Ryan McDonough just came out and said, I'm not really sure, but I support the people who have the stories, and I support them having come out and said it. You're going to need some people that just happen to be in the organization and then they went to somewhere else. They weren't fired or let go or something like that, or somebody's still in the organization. But until that happens, if Jalen's releasing things and Earl Watson's releasing things, people are going to sit there and say, well, but you kind of have an axe to grind, don't you?
And I will say Watson's timing was pretty bold, because he did this over a year ago before he even had a job back in the NBA. So for him to go on the record like that and not know when the story was going to drop, that puts himself at risk to not get hired back in the NBA. So I listened to like the Chris Haynes pod about this, and they're just kind of talking about that, how he kind of almost like forgot about the story, and then it just popped up like a year later. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, this is some pretty scary times, really. So can you guys, let's talk about this. So say nothing happens with Robert Sarver. He gets a slap on the wrist. He probably, what I'm guessing, here's what I'm guessing. What I'm guessing is that the league's going to do an investigation that takes way too long. They're going to come out, and what's going to have happened is he's probably going to be told to hire a new HR manager with special powers of some sort to run the team. He was already told to hire Jeff Bauer to help general manage the team for a year. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's told to hire an HR person, a high profile HR person, and then maybe fined and told to go to sensitivity training and pay for employees to go to empowerment and sensitivity type trainings and stuff like that. That's, I think, the worst that's going to happen, in my opinion. You guys, tell me, what do you think? Can you still be a fan of the Phoenix Suns knowing that this guy is in charge of your team? We'll start with you, PLR.
Yes. I mean, Maverick fans are still fans of the Mavericks with Cuban there. This really sounds more like a Cuban situation, to be perfectly honest with you. And you left some parts out, Dave. So we have to clean some stuff up. He's going to be told to hire a new HR manager that will either be black or a female. He's going to send people to sensitivity training or both. So
maybe Michelle Roberts will be the new chief of operations after she retires.
Honestly, sometimes I think it's so overtly obvious in its stupidity that we're going to go all the way to the other side. You know what? You are known to be a racist, so we're going to help prove that you're not, and we're going to go ahead and create this situation that shows we're going to have a cape for the other side. So not only are you going to hire a woman, but she's going to be a black woman from Puerto Rican descent who grew up in South America, whose dad came from the Middle East. It's going to be something ridiculous like that, so you can check every single box. And honestly, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I find that more insulting than affirmative. Not talking about the person who's getting the job thinking they're not going to do a good job. I'm not saying that, but I find it insulting. That's like you going, hey, you know what? I really do have a black friend. Let me show you. I can bring 3 of my black friend guests on this show. To me, that's really what you're doing, and I bet that's what is going to end up happening down the line, and we'll see. The slap on the wrist, the new HR, like you said, but there'll be someone of color or agenda, something like that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That's probably what's going to happen with how things stand. Unless something new pops up, I just can't see it going past that. Unless the league just really is invested in moving on from kind of this cloud that follows Sarver, and his reputation kind of, I feel like for years now, like the league's not really been a fan of his, but there's been nothing to really move the needle. And to me, it's still kind of sitting in that Cuban spot, and until something new pops up, it's just really hard to see it changing. But a week from now, there could be a lot more that's out there. So who knows? It's a very fluid situation, and we'll see how this investigation goes. But I know it's going to be dragged out for a long time, and I'm already annoyed by it, and it's probably going to only get worse as time goes on.
Can you still be a fan, Zona?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to compartmentalize that. He's not the players. He's not the coaches. I don't think anyone's liked Sarver in the first place. Like throughout this whole run, this whole finals run, everyone's kind of ignored him, I would say, and just kind of enjoyed what's been going on. And for him, it's finally, I saw fans last year starting to say, can we forgive Sarver? Is it time to forgive Sarver just because of the team's success? And then this drops, and it's we're back to square one now. So yeah, you can still be a fan. It's not if you can't separate the two, that's on you.
I think we should establish though that the players and other people in the NBA know what's what. Every single person I've talked to says none of that story is new about Sarver. They just never some of the stories they hadn't heard before, but everything rang true. So to say that this is going to hurt the Suns as a competitive professional franchise, no. Robert Sarver's done enough.
Yeah, we're Suns fans, not Sarver fans. So
right, we're Suns fans, and every other player in the league already knows what's what with Robert Sarver, and they decide whether to sign or not. If you think that's hurt the Suns' ability to sign people or acquire people in the past, it probably has, but it won't change now. It won't change going forward. It just is what it is. So if you are a fan of the team itself, be a fan of the team. That doesn't mean you're a fan of the owner. Coach, what do you think? Can you still be a fan?
Oh, absolutely. And I thought that was actually a very deep question, Dave. Can you be a fan of the team? I mean, I think of any sport, right? If Michael Vick, when he played for the Atlanta Falcons and the dogfighting incident took place, Atlanta Falcons fans didn't abandon the organization saying, well, that one quarterback did that one bad thing, and so it's kind of that's an interesting question in and of itself. What are we fans of? Are we fans of the owner? Are we fans of the players? I mean, we obviously went through a whole decade of terribleness where a lot of those players, with the exception of Devin Booker, aren't there anymore. So, I mean, we're obviously still a fan of, I think it's an idea, honestly, of what we're a fan of. The Phoenix Suns as an idea of a team in Arizona. I don't live in Arizona, but it's just always been my team since the early 90s. And so whoever comes and plays, whoever comes and coaches, who's ever the general manager, and even when the ownership changes hands, my fandom remains the same. But PLR, I think you need to expand it a little bit more in your example. I think we're going to need to change the name to Los Suns for every game from moving forward. And we're going to need to hire somebody for Chinese expansion and then PR relations, because we really got to hit the two additional
all the
markets
tokens got to be in there.
Exactly. It's an opportunity for expansion.
Hey, we could use a G League team down in Mexico. They're opening. So there you go. It's another route.
That's an episode for another time now. We got to discuss that again.
That's right. All right, guys, I think we've beaten this one down. Unfortunately, it's going to be in the news for weeks and if not months. So we'll talk about this again. Let's move on to the second quarter. PLR, you're welcome to stay if you want to, but I totally understand if you want to get out. Just take yourself out whenever you want, but feel free to stay. We're going to talk about basketball from now on. Let's focus on the basketball team because we decided that we can still be fans of the basketball team regardless of what is happening with ownership. And on the basketball team, what we're seeing is a really up and down performance so far this year. And what I'm really struggling with is that second unit, the leadership, the ball movement on that second unit. Cam Johnson has kind of become an afterthought. Landry Shamet, until he made some shots, had become an afterthought. And I think it revolves around, in my opinion, it revolves around the backup point guard. So I want to throw it out to you guys. What do you think of the pros and cons of Alfred Payne versus Cameron Payne as the backup point guard, and how badly do we need Cam Payne back as soon as possible? PLR, we'll start with you since you're still here.
I know I haven't kicked myself out. I figured I may as well keep the 25% of the group intact, so that way you're not moving the black dude off the show before he gets to talk basketball.
That's right, man.
Dave King, a.k.a. Robert Sarver.
Wouldn't that be typical of podcasters, that when it comes time to talk basketball, the black dude can
go. In terms of campaign, I think they need him. It's not just skill, it's energy. And Cam brings a certain energy off the bench. I think Alfred Payne, in all honesty, has done a decent job. He's a lot better than what they had last year if Cam Payne wasn't on this team. But Cam has a certain energy and the ability to know when to score, when to pass, with this team anyway, to get them going. I think that's something that's missing. Without him there, we're seeing a lot more of not just Alfred Payne, but a lot more of like Nader. And let's be honest, I think with the second unit too, Coach Monty Williams is trying to figure out who can do what early in the year. Because the other night, he had a lineup out there, and I know I was sitting next to you, Dave, and I was like, who's going to score? So I think he's touching and feeling and seeing what's happening. And if we look back over the teams that go to the finals, that first 3-4 weeks out the gate, they kind of struggle a little bit and they try to get their footings. And I think that's really where the Suns are. And when you're missing someone like Cam Payne, I think it hurts you more than helps you. But when he's back, I think that energy comes back and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. The energy is like the main thing. Anytime he gets hot or they go on a big run, usually it starts with Cam Payne, whether that's just, showing passion or leading a fast break, picking up the pace, moving the ball. Alfred Payne's done great as a third string point guard. He's done what you'd expect him to do, but at the same time, he has the lowest net rating on the team. It's like minus 12.7, and that's by a pretty wide margin. And it's also leading more Nader minutes, like you mentioned, which Nader's been pretty abysmal this season. So I think when Payne's healthy, we're going to see more 3-guard lineups in that second unit. And the other main point I want to touch on is just the chemistry. I feel like the second unit has been up and down with Payton and Payne coming in and out of the rotation. So once Payne's back, I think you're going to see that second unit flow a lot better. Payton's not really your ideal 0.5 system guy. He kind of needs the ball in his hands to do what he does out of the pick and roll and stuff like that. So if he can just learn to kind of make quicker decisions, I think that'll help. And I think there's times where he does, like when he's playing with Booker, I like that a little bit more than when he's playing with someone like Shamet, who hasn't really shown those ball skills yet. But yeah, overall, they're definitely missing Payne. And once he's back, I think we'll kind of see that energy pick up in the second unit.
Yeah, I think for the short term, absolutely. Alfred he's actually surprised me. Maybe I had horrible expectations. I really did not like that even though he's getting a minimum contract, I was terrified that he was coming back to play for the Suns. Even the break the glass in case of emergency version of him. But watching the Rockets game, I was like, gosh, he moves the ball pretty well, and he's still got that little shot that looks like he doesn't even care if it goes in or not, where he just tosses it up, and it was actually going in. And I think he's doing pretty well for what I guess my expectations were. Moving forward into the season, and obviously into the playoffs, I don't want to see him. And I think a concern would be with JaVale McGee with him. because they both kind of do that little just flick it up at the basket and hope it goes in, and then try and get a tip in type shot. And that's where Campaign's really going to come out and be a little bit better. He's going to help spread the floor a little bit more. He can hit the three a lot more consistently. Well, Alfred won't even shoot it anymore. But if you're going to play with JaVale, I don't think you can have Alfred in that same, second unit coming off, because if Cam Johnson's shots aren't going in, then you just have everybody just trying to flick the ball up at the hoop and hope something goes in. So kind of like PLR said, who's actually gonna make the shots? Landry Shamet was hot against the Rockets. I mean, just showing up, and he just looked like, yeah, I deserve to be out here and get more minutes. I hope he keeps that mentality moving forward, because that will really help that unit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have two
I
hilarious stats. I just want to, sorry to cut you off. I just have two hilarious stats I want to share. I know it's early in the season, but JaVale McGee has a 6% higher usage rate than DeAndre Ayton right now, and Alfred Payne has a 2.5% higher usage than Chris Paul. So that's where we're at. A little too much Alfred and JaVale. That'll balance out as the season goes on, though.
They are two of the top three in usage. We talked about that last week. The thing is, Alfred Payton is good at getting into the paint, and JaVale is good at scoring when he touches or putting the shot up when he touches the ball. What that ends up doing, though, is freezing out the rest of the guys. I mean, the Suns have been at a 3-point deficit all season. For the first game all season, 7 games in, they finally outshot on 3-pointers against Houston and outmade on 3-pointers. They had not done that once all season until then. And last year the average was that they had outshot and outmade the other team on threes. And so the Suns are really at a deficit there. The threes still do count more than twos. And JaVale, especially as being a 50% free throw shooter, and Alfred not being a great free throw shooter as well, that's kind of hurt the Suns overall. So even though those guys are putting up stats, I don't know that they're positive stats at this point, unless there's more balance on the team. So I'm looking forward to Cam Payne. I know he's not the greatest passer in the world either, but he really gets the ball around. He knows the 0.5 offense real well, and he keeps the ball moving. And that's what's important. I actually, I have loved the effort that Frank has been putting in. He and Mikal are two of the better performers so far this year off the bench. And because Frank is a connector, because he doesn't have to do all the scoring. He's been scoring when he needs to, but he doesn't have to. He moves the ball, and I like seeing that ball move around. So let's take a vote. When Cam Payne is back fully, do you ever want to see Alfred Payton again? PLR.
Sure, I have nothing against what he's doing. I mean, he's a third-string point guard, so just that in itself means we'll see less of him. The person I'd be more interested in seeing less of right now until his game develops more is Nader, to be perfectly honest with you. Alfred Payne,
his game ain't developing.
I just wonder. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a hater. I just maybe Monty Williams is seeing something that I'm not. I just don't see what he's giving. Again, I'm not trying to be a hater. I just don't see it. But to answer your question, we will see less of Payton just because he's third string. So yes, we will see less.
Zone.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we don't see him at all. And it's not a knock on him; he's done fine. But I think with Paul and Payne and Shamet and Booker, your guards are kind of set. But if I had to choose between him or Nader playing, I'd pick Payton. Go with the 3-guard lineup if you have to. I'm not trying to hate on him either, but Nader has like a 39.7 true shooting percent right now. 2 assists on the season,
and also a very
turnovers.
high usage rate.
Yeah, he just has tunnel vision, and you can't have that in this offense. It would be one thing if he was getting to the rim and scoring, but he's not. So it's just, kind of turned that question into like a Nader hate session. But I agree. Yeah. I think for the most part, though, the less we see of Payton, the better for the Suns, and that's not a knock on him.
You know, when you said he's had a 39.7, what is that, effective field
true
goal rate?
shooting?
True shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's higher than I thought. I mean, I swear to God, I haven't seen him make a basket this year.
Yeah.
Me either. And I don't even do analytics. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm that dude. I'm old dude. Get off my lawn. My eyes are analytics. he can't play right now. So I don't know what his true shooting, his false shooting. I know dude hasn't hit a shot, and he only hit one free throw. That means to me, go sit down on that other end of the bench next to the dude with the broad shoulders that should be playing football.
Yeah. Coach, what do you think?
Well, I think if Alfred, if we see him anymore in the lineup, as I mentioned with JaVale, I think you have to put Frank out there with him because Frank can actually stretch the floor a little bit and hit a 3-point shot and a deep too. So I will say that. But early on, I will say, is the third string of the Suns the best third string in the association so far?
One of them.
It's the most playable for sure.
Exactly.
They go in and do their job.
Yeah. I was like, Frank Kaminsky won't get minutes, but he's actually turning out playing pretty decently for expectations. Alfred, I was like, this is going to be just a nightmare. And no, he's actually doing all right. Now, I mean, the stats kind of will show different things, but I think for a third string, you look at some of the teams that just their second strings aren't great. So no, I think one of the strengths of the Suns will definitely be its depth this year. But call me the contrarian, Pyramid Poppy. I'd rather have him still getting minutes than Alfred Payton. I just think that Monty sees something in him. I think he's they're trying to develop him into an attacking wing. An aggressive attacking wing that can also hit threes. And so I think he's just forcing it too much early. And I think they'll still continue to give him shots moving forward. Or they won't, or they'll just Jalen Smith him and just pretend that, they've got absolutely nothing with him, try and get rid of him.
I'd rather give Chandler Hutchison a shot. That's how far gone I am on Nader. I think that experiment.
Or Ish Wainwright.
But I do agree. He is what they need. They need someone that can get to the rim. They need someone that can get to the rim, which he can do. He just can't finish right now. So hopefully the slump can't get any worse, hopefully. But yeah, it's been rough.
The highlight of the season for me for Nader was when Ayton was furious fouling out against the Rockets, and immediately Nader went and put his arm around him. And I just imagined that here's Ayton, a guy that should be playing on a max contract, sitting down, frustrated, just fouled out, was having a solid game otherwise. And Nader, a guy barely making him above minimum, throws his arm around him. He's like, don't worry, buddy, it's going to be okay. Like, you expect the star to be like, get off me, like guy that barely plays. But no, Nader's part of the team. He's like, hey, man, just relax. You'll be fine. We'll get him next game. So he must be one of those good locker room influences, too. That's why Monty's like, you're a good leader, so let's keep giving you opportunities.
All right, man. So we have talked about the third string. I like how so says Jay. Do you know any other third strings outside of the Suns? So yes, of course they're the best. But yeah, I think the Suns do have a playable. We know the Suns' prior iterations of third string rotation players, and these guys are the best that we've seen in a long time. So no hate to Alfred Payton, but I prefer Campaign, and yeah, let's just do a little bit less of. Find someone to love you as much as Monty loves Abdel Nader. I mean, come on. That's everyone's goal in life. All right. Next segment, we got baller talk. We have a couple of DA comments from our ballers, from our members on the YouTube channel. You guys, you got to follow up and watch. Sorry, the members on our YouTube channel. You guys have access to contribute to the show, contribute hot takes to the show. So if you get in there and watch for me asking for your hot takes, provide them to me. I got a couple that we didn't get to last week that I want to bring forward this week. There are a couple of DA-oriented ones. Buck Dog says the DA should be a top 2 option on offense, and the Suns need to figure out a way to make it happen, surrounding him with proper developmental talent and adjusting the offense to incorporate it. There will be no repeat finals run. ISO ball and streaky three-point shooter can only get you so far, and pay the man. Before the Sarver scandal cast an even more negative cloud on the franchise. Well, apparently it's Sarver who didn't want to pay the man. Like I've been telling people for weeks, people have said that James Jones said he didn't want to pay him. That's because James Jones was letting himself get hit by the bus. It's Sarver who didn't want to pay Ayton. So I want to run it around the horn. We'll start with PLR. Should DA be a top 2 option on the offense?
Yes, we saw that the other night or about a week ago, whenever it was, when he had a monster first half, took one shot in the second half, which was absolutely astonishingly stupid. But I blame DA for some of that too a little bit. And I'll say it like this. When you're a dominant big man, there are times when you have to come down court when you're hot and you have to clap your hands and look at your guard and say, I don't give a damn what else you do. Throw me the ball. And his personality doesn't do that. He just kind of goes with the flow. If you're giving it to him, he'll go with it. If you're not, you're not. Sometimes to be great and to make others great, you got to be a little selfish. And I don't think he's matured into that yet or learned that yet. Because when you look at other big men in the NBA, true big men, when Anthony Davis is cooking, before he gets hurt, you better give him the ball. When guys are cooking, they're demanding the ball. I have yet to see Aiden once come down court, demand the ball and not get it, and run down court and tap his point guard or book on the button and say, come on now, you got to get it into me. I'm working this dude. I think it goes both ways. Yeah, he should be the number 2 scorer. That's a fact. But he also has to act like he wants to be the number 2 scorer on the team. Coach, let's go with you next.
No, I think PLR nailed it again. I mean, watching the Rockets game, the most recent one, I mean, just he was making himself such a big window, and it didn't matter whether he was fronted or if the defender went to the back of him. And every time they did pass it to him, he laid it in. It was an easy basket, or he was getting hit hard and they just weren't calling it because they really pulled back on a lot of fouls. But I think you're right. It's not really his personality. He's not going to be the new Shaqtus in the Valley, so he's not going to start walking up to Chris Paul and putting his finger in his chest and say, you will drop the ball into me when I'm open again. But I think, I don't know, to me, I think I've seen a lot more verbal, nonverbal cues this year of him demonstrating that, hey, like, don't just tell me to run out here and put a screen for you. Like, hey, I'm open now. Like, let's see it. And so I think he's getting there, but he's never going to be that guy. He's not going to be Joel Embiid that's going to, like, yeah, if the guys aren't passing it to me, we're going to lose type player. But so he's trending the right direction. I'd like to see it a little bit more though.
Zone.
Yeah, PLR hit the nail on the head. I think he needs to be, but does he have the demeanor to do that on a consistent basis? Right now, it's no. Part of that is personnel. Part of that is just his unwillingness to put the ball on the floor. Like, I'm not saying he needs to bring the ball down the floor and dribble and, be honest. He just needs to do some, like, power dribble moves to either get to the line or finish through contact a little bit more often. Because right now he's just too reliant on others getting him the ball. I would love to see him have one of those Andrew Bynum moments where he's just like, give me the effing ball. And, like, you could hear it on the mic'd up rim. I would love that, but he just doesn't have that. There is a little bit more of a mean streak. Like, Coach is saying, we've seen more flashes of that, like that technical he got against Houston. I love that. I would love to see him just, start throwing guys to the ground, like nothing malicious or anything, but if he can start to do that on a more consistent basis, and I think he will, you have to remember he's still 23. Bigs take longer, and there's going to be a point where hopefully he turns that page. But yeah, part of it is attitude. Part of it is, like, the team just needs to look for it more often. He needs to roll harder, and I think he has it in him to be the number 2 option. Him and Mikal both could kind of share those duties now, and I like that Chris Paul's it seems like he's taking a little bit of a back seat offensively and trying to get people more involved. He's leading the NBA in assists. He's not shooting as much. So I think he knows the future of this team has to be through, Book, Ayton, and Mikal. So the consistency is the key.
Yeah, you guys know where I stand on DeAndre Ayton. I think he is in exactly the role he should be in right now. And the role by that I mean he is the 3rd or 4th option on offense. I don't think he needs to be a bigger role on offense. I think he's right in that. Look, man, it's not about me getting my points. It's about the team winning games. And he is not the reason the teams have lost their games in the past couple of years. He's not the reason they lost their games even the first couple of years of his career. It's the rest of the team around him. Now, PLR, you're right. Does he need to? Should he be more aggressive? Could he be more aggressive? Yes. Against the Rockets in particular, in the first half, he was doing fadeaways against smaller guys when he really should have been just leaning up and in and over. That's what he was doing in the playoffs. Playoffs DA is the exact perfect DA to win you multiple playoff series every year. In that, he did lean in and over the little guys. He did do exactly what he was supposed to do on the roll. He was locked in 100% and aggressive. Did he suddenly become Amari Stoudemire on dunks? No, but he doesn't need to be. I think he's in the exact role he needs to be for this team to win championships, to go deep in the playoffs every single year. And that's an excellent role. And it also is a max player role. DA's problem is that he's got the demeanor that makes you think he doesn't care. But show me a player who's done what he's done, especially defensively, especially absorbing contact on defense, especially going after all these things, that all the rebounds and going after these guys on help defense and finishing when he gets the ball. He's one of the best finishers in the game. That guy cares. He just doesn't show it on his sleeves with a scowl. And he lets people run over him personally, motivationally, letting Robert Sarver get away with the shit that we've heard that Robert Sarver gets away with him, running him down and yelling at him, and then indirectly calling him a lazy guy and not wanting to pay him. DA deserves the respect. He does deserve the respect. He shouldn't have to demand it by being a punk to get it. And I feel like if he had CP3's mentality, he'd be Shaq. But he doesn't have CP3's mentality. And it's okay for him to not to have CP3's mentality. No, that's totally okay. So come on, give me a freaking break. He doesn't need to be number 2. He could be number 2. He's got the talent to be number 2. He's got the talent to be number 1 on offense. But do the Suns need that to win a championship? I don't think so. All right, the next question. Fallen Founder actually had a hot take. So I'm going to let you dig into this one. You had put this in the comments last week. Your take is that DA won't be traded. Now, there's a lot more information we know a week later, don't we, than we knew then. When Robert Sarver wants somebody out, that person gets out. When Robert Sarver doesn't respect a person, they get themselves out. We haven't seen it yet with DA, but if it's true that Robert Sarver called him a lazy guy and refused to close on the signing this past year with James Jones, gives a whole lot of weight to James Jones saying, hey, man, we didn't have any negotiations because they wouldn't come off a max deal. It could also be that James Jones didn't have any negotiations because Robert Sarver didn't want to have negotiations. Could also be that. So now that you know what you know this week, if Jalen Rose is at all right that Robert Sarver didn't want to sign DA this offseason, do you think DA is going to be traded this year? Go, Coach.
It did change a little bit. Is it more possible now than it was a week or so ago? Probably. But I mean, I think if James Jones is running the show and it's not Todd Packer making decisions and saying weird things in the office place, then I think there's zero reason to trade DA. The way I read the negotiations was DA was okay last year. I mean, he was good, not great. And so was he worth a full max? Not right away. And then we saw playoffs DA, and we're like, wow, this guy is fantastic, but we're going to need to see it again. Like, repeat that, and then we'll pay you. And we've got the right, of first refusal. I mean, we can do we can make the offer and basically match everything and pay him more. So I viewed it much more as just replicate it one more time and we will pay you, man, but you did it once for us. You did, like, you showed us what we really wanted, but just for the playoffs, can you show us that more? But I don't know what happened. I think the Sharks tasted a little blood in the water because Sarver and company were just like, oh yeah, no, he wanted max. We're not ready to pay him max. And so every fan organization of every other team, every part, middling executive in the GM offices around the league were like, maybe they want to trade DA. Maybe his trade value is terrible. We could offer you guys a second round pick and a terrible player for DA if you want to get him off your roster. I mean, if you Google Ayton trade, the Heat think they can get him. The Knicks think they can get him. Like, all these people really want him. And I was just blown away. I was like, we're not trying to get rid of him, right? This is the most insane take ever, that we're going to try and ship off somebody that is clearly our defensive anchor.
PLR.
The only trade possibility for DeAndre Ayton is Karl Anthony Towns, and that would be a sign and trade. And you'd have to think that the only thing he's going to give you is a better shot because he's not better defensively because Karl Anthony Towns doesn't want to play defense. So if that's the trade you make, you're changing the whole look of your team. And I love Twitter, but like I forget who said it earlier, everyone should go to law school. Everyone should go to accounting, and everyone should go to reality school. The number one pick of the draft, with the exception of Porzingis, a first rounder, I should just say, that's going to get paid, they do not leave unless they can orchestrate a trade where they can get their money on their second deal. DeAndre Ayton is not leaving all that money on the table. So let's forget that part right there because the Suns are going to match like you said, or they're going to trade. There's only one trade partner. That's it. There are no more. You're not going to trade him for Ben Simmons. You're not going to trade him for anything that Miami has. I mean, Miami people kill me. They look at a roster that's gritty and they think everybody wants everybody on that team. No, that team works because that team is put together like that. There's no one person on that team that you're trading DeAndre Ayton for. So I love
trade,
it all.
you wouldn't swap one-on-one if you could Bam for
No,
DA?
not even close. Wouldn't even think about it. Because what Bam does well may not necessarily fit here because have anyone just watch a Bam Adebayo offensive tape for 5 minutes and you're going to be like, good God.
Is there 5 minutes worth?
Exactly. So I love it. Honestly, I agree. I think this was you had a good year. You had a great playoffs. Let's see if you bring that a full year. He's going to get maxed. Was the timing right the way the Suns did it? No. Was it the right message to send? No. Is it going to happen? Yes. And when he gets his max money, he's going to say the same thing he said when he came to pre-draft workouts. This is a team I'm going to get drafted by. They're going to pick me, and I'm going to be here for a long time. And it's amazing how when that second contract is signed, everyone forgets everything else because those deposits are going in twice a month. He'll be fine.
Zona.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to stay here. It's hard to see him getting traded. The only thing with Karl Anthony Towns is obviously him and Booker are close. So that's the one thing that could lead to, like, let's say they have a first round exit this year and just really disappoint in the playoffs or something. And Ayton's not happy about the contract. Maybe in the offseason we see something happen. But during the season, I just don't see a trade happening. It wouldn't make sense to do that. You just went to the finals, anchored by this guy defensively, and the grass is always greener, right? Like some of these names being brought up, like they have their own issues, and defensively, Ayton with this core makes the most sense of almost any big out there right now. Gobert included. Like this is a guy that got played off the court against the Clippers. So yeah, I think the Boston situation is also something to monitor. Maybe like Tatum or Brown if one of those guys becomes available. But outside of that, I just don't see it happening. I think, like PLR said, just the money talks, and once he gets that second contract, it'll cure all. So I don't see him getting moved.
That second contract, man. People are still riding that one, aren't they? All I want is a second contract in the NBA. Well, if you look at Jalen Smith, then maybe you realize it is good to try to play for a second contract. All right. So my take, will DA be traded? I'm a little worried now. Should DA be traded? No. Is there a good trade out there that makes the Suns better overall? And when I say better, what I think is funny is I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. It's not going to take long, but I'm going to.
Dave, freeze up.
It's like the rant is over.
Now that was a great rant.
Well, he said it wouldn't take long. It didn't take long. 5 seconds, start to end.
Oh my. Well, let me ask you guys this until Dave comes back. One possibility, and if only because I was reminded by my classic voodoo doll that I had to pick up when I was down in New Orleans, is if the Pelicans think it's time to move on from the Zion experiment, and that's a first. And would you take Zion back for DA? Their salaries are close enough to where you could get away with it, and you would obviously have to start a different center, but we'd have Zion at the 4 then. Is that something you guys would think about?
I wouldn't trade anything for Zion Williams. Nothing. ever. His and with me, it has nothing to do with talent. His lower body cannot support the weight of his upper body, so he will forever be injured, even when he's in perfect shape. Because last year he only had about an 8% body fat, which isn't bad by the end of the year. The problem is he's so explosive and he lands so hard, and that frame is a lot coming down on that lower part of his body. I just don't think he will ever be a guy that's going to give you more than 70 games a year. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, 70 games a year is fine. Well, yeah, but when do you get to 70? Do you get it at the start of the year, or do you get it at the end of the year when you need it? So he's a guy as talented as he is. I just would never trade for him until he can prove maybe a season or two that he could stay healthy and play, 78 plus games. I would never trade for him.
Yeah, I think I would trade for him if the value was not what he's going to be worth, but I don't think that's not realistic. So given what you're probably going to have to give back to get him, I agree. I wouldn't trade for him. Just the injury front is just too much for me. And I just think the way, the weight issue, especially with foot injuries and stuff like that, that's not going to go away until it does. And I don't know. It's just a little too risky for a team that's trying to compete now. Obviously, in a perfect world, if he's healthy and you're guaranteed, obviously he's one of the best players in the league. But that's a very big if. I think Brandon Ingram actually might be another guy that could be looked at in some trades. And feel bad for Willie Green over there. He's gone through a lot in his first season.
Yeah, I just wonder if Zion getting out of the Bayou and leaving New Orleans. I don't know if you guys have been to New Orleans. All I can do is eat when I'm in New Orleans because the food is absolutely phenomenal. It's music, it's drinking, and it's food all the time, everywhere that you go, pretty much. And so I could see how Zion, if he came to the desert, he could sweat it out, drop some of the weight and, limber up a little bit. But yeah, I think you're right. The knees and the waist would have some trouble. Oh, that was a great rant, Dave, and perfect, Mark, because we just
you guys heard all of it, right?
I totally
traded
agree.
Aiden for Zion. It's over. We fixed the whole roster.
Jesus Christ, man! My power just went out in my house. The entire place went dark. So I guess the universe
beautiful.
does not want to hear my rant. Did Robert Sarver get control over my power company?
No, he had to throw a quick $20 on an SRPM power card. Pop it right in. Power came right back on.
Wow. Well, you know what? I lost my steam. I tried to start that rant. Now I don't even remember what the rant was going to be about. So it must not have been that important. Wow. I'm glad it was you guys. I'm glad you guys were on there. Imagine if it was just me in the middle of this.
No, we've just been sitting here waiting to hear the rant this whole time. It's just been silence. So
what was I going to say? I don't remember now. I got so distracted by the fact that all the power was out and I had to wait for my internet to reboot. I'm lost. So, hey, we've been on here for almost an hour and a half. I appreciate everybody's time. I think at this point we should probably wrap it up. Everyone loves talking about this stuff. Let's go around the horn. We're going to do some parting words. You guys can say anything you guys want to say. PLR, we're going to start with you. Thank you. So tell us where we can find you and what's your final thoughts on the show.
You can find me every day, Monday through Friday. I got to stop saying every day. You can find me Monday through Friday on the Cave Show, 1:00 live. Just go to thesportscave.com. Cave is with the K. Hit that listen live button. We are on Spotify, iHeart, KSRN. We're all over the place. And I do Twitter. My Twitter is different, though, because if you follow the Sports Cave with the K on Twitter or the Instagram, it's nice. If you follow PLR on Sports on Twitter, you never know what I'm going to say. I'm in a battle right now with Days of Our Lives. So that's a whole nother story. Yes, I do watch Days of Our Lives. But the one thing.
Is that still around?
Yes, it is. And I still watch it religiously. I DVR it and I watch my Days of Our Lives every night that I come home. So that's my guilty. That's my guilty
watching
pleasure.
It long enough for the young people on the show to now be the grandparents.
Yes. Oh, they're dying off on me left and right in real life. So having a hard time with that. But the one thing that I will say more than anything is it has to do with the Suns and it has to do with actual basketball. and not the Sarver thing. I think there has to be a certain amount of patience. I think the mentality has to switch. Jay Crowder said it earlier. Your mind has to switch from being the hunter to being the hunted. And I think it takes young teams a little bit of time to understand that, 1-6 Rockets team, they're going to play you different this year than they played you last year, just because of who you are and what you've accomplished. And I think once they mentally get to that point, I still think this is a 55-win team. I still think they'll be fine. I still don't think there's anybody in the West as constructed pre-trade that can beat them in a 7-game series. So I just tell everyone, be really patient, watch this team grow, enjoy it, and all the other outside noise, let it go. Oh, and the Bulls are going to be a 4th seed.
Boo on that last comment. Coach, tell us where we can find you and what are your parting thoughts today?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Fallen Founder. Love the reference to soap operas. PLR, maybe we need to eat some pickled herring together and do other old people type stuff, because I have not heard anyone talk about Days of Our Lives. Oh, for the longest time. I mean, it sounds like my father always has to watch The Price is Right every morning still. No, I think we have a good game coming up tonight against the Hawks. I'm very interested in checking that out. The Clint Capella DA battle, Trae Young against Chris Paul, and I think we're going to have some fun with it. So I'm excited. I think the Suns are learning that it's not just about proving doubters wrong this season. It's now imposing your will. You got to where you got because you are talented. Now go out and punish people for it. They're not going to. You don't get to shock teams anymore. The Rockets and the Pelicans, for example, they are just trying to play for their next contracts, really, and to develop their own skill sets. So you need to come out and embarrass them. The Lakers, for example, think they can do that, and they can't, as we just saw with the Thunder the other night. So there's some teams that can do it, that have the potential to do it. We're seeing a couple good teams. I think the Jazz are off to a nice hot start for themselves. The Suns need to replicate that. We're leaving the Lakers behind, and we're going to start seeing, I think, a Suns-Utah battle kind of in the middle and later parts of the season. So check out the Suns. I'm predicting they win by, let's go with 8 tonight, and that they pull away at the end.
All right, Zona, where can we find you, and what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. I'm not worried about this team either. I mean, they're a half game back from the 3rd seed in the West. All things considered, like it's going to be. They're going to be fine. Obviously, they're kind of playing down to their competition, which is normal for a team coming off like a finals run. They kind of have that hangover. They used to be the team that was like the Rockets that would get up for the Suns. So it's kind of cool that we're in that position now where it's like these teams, they're going to give you your best shot. So, and they have that switch that they can kind of turn on and just kind of Chris Paul just goes into like asshole mode. He's like, we're not losing this team. And I love that. So obviously you don't want to make that a habit, and hopefully against a good Hawks team, like they come out locked in from the start, because, if they don't, they're going to torch them. So, looking forward to this game tonight. And I always feel better when they play against good teams, just because I feel like they play to their competition more often than not. So this should be a fun one.
Yeah, it should definitely be a fun one. And they can find you at Zona Hoops _. And I'm not going to do the Espo thing to tell you what the underscore is for. You guys can figure that out for yourself.
Still trying to get the Zona Hoops, but someone has it from like 2010 that's never tweeted before. So
seriously,
yeah, it's terrible.
You should DM them and see if they'll sell it to you. You're right, Zona. That was a good point that the Suns have gone on some runs. In the last 3 games, they've gone on a 50-12 run against the Cavaliers, a 31-11 run versus the Pelicans, and a 40-19 run against the Rockets to take control of those 3 games. Those are against all bad teams. The Suns are finally playing another good team tonight. I really do think that the Suns are going to show up against the Hawks coming up. And then they have a rematch against the Kings, who they beat. I'm pretty sure, they beat earlier this year. And then they've got Portland on Wednesday, and then they have Memphis on Friday. So I think it's going to be a big week for the Suns. I feel like they're going to win 3 of those games. I think they're starting to get their wind, and I believe that Cam Payne is coming back pretty soon. I think he gave us a hint when he said he woke up feeling really good yesterday. I think he gave us the hint that he's going to be playing again. So, and Blaze, as a parting thought to wrap all the show,
That's
the entire
perfect.
show into one comment on the YouTube chat, Blaze Megatron. I, for one, am looking forward to pantsing the Hawks. Yes. So would a certain person who will be sitting in the corner watching the game unfold. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you for joining the show. Congratulations to all you folks in the show who have not given up on the Suns despite what you've heard about the owner. We'll let it all play out. And in the meantime, we're going to watch a good team play basketball. I'm Dave King NBA. I'm at Dave King NBA. I am just Dave King. I don't actually go around my life saying, my name is Dave King NBA. How are you? Hello, my name is Dave. No, so I am at Dave King NBA on Twitter. You can find me and Zona's writing on brightsideofthesun.com. You can also find Zona at zonahoops.com. And you can always find us here on the solar panel. So if you guys will do me a favor, stay on for a couple, not the host, you got to stay on anyway, but the folks in the chat, folks watching right now, stay on. I'm going to remind you about how to find our podcast in the new feed that we've had to do since the divorce with Espo and Saul. I want to remind you guys how to find that feed because you're missing some great shows in the middle of the week. For those watching this episode on YouTube, I've got some news for you. You're only getting half the story. The Solar Panel Podcast delivers you an additional special episode every Wednesday with a national personality from places like The Ringer, The Athletic, Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, NBA.com, and everyone else. You'll hear what the non-locals think about the Suns and the NBA in general. It's a new feed, though. You've got to click some buttons. Forget the old one. Get the new one. Go to your favorite pod app. Search for Solar Panel Podcast with the orange logo. While you're there, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you leave me a 5-star review, I'll give you props on the air. All right, folks. So please go to the podcast feed. Follow that. We got some great shows midweek that we do. And in the meantime, we'll see you next Saturday, and we'll recap how the Suns have done after 4 more games. They got four games this week. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Thanks for coming.